you have to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. You have to remove yours first. So when it comes to storytelling or story feeling, regardless of which capacity you're starting or being a banker and having traveled across India, I'm presenting something where I'm showing a lot of facial expressions.
Have you ever listened to a story in a pitch, a meeting, or a product launch and felt absolutely nothing? Or in a world overflowing with content, do people really need more stories? Or do they crave for more connection? This is what we'll be covering today. Hi, I'm Raghu Kiran. Welcome to another heart centered episode where we explore the intersection of leadership, communication, and authenticity. Today, I'm thrilled to speak with Divya Chandrika Mohan, a product strategy leader at SAP, creative thinker, and the mind behind Emopathy, a powerful blend of emotion and empathy in leadership. Divya helps teams and startups craft narratives that just don't inform, but they do inspire. Whether she's mentoring founders or shaping product value stories or guiding leaders to bring vulnerability into communication, she champions this shift from storytelling to story filling as a strategic edge. Divya, welcome. It's great to have you with us here, and I'm so glad I've been really looking forward to have this conversation with you.
Same here, Raghu Kiran. Thanks for having me. And what a beautiful introduction, right? From information to inspiration. So you got the essence of all our discussions in that. Thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure, Divya. And I think before we go into the deep dive, the magic narrative of communication and empathetic leadership that you bring on the table, right? I want to start something very simple. Um, just tell me more about you and what's your story behind um, your journey into strategy, your storytelling, and this beautiful vision of art and fusion of art and leadership that you often talk about.
Absolutely. Would love to. Reflections are always good. It's like a string of stories you remember, right? I'm a big believer. Life is but a string of stories. So let me start with my family, right? I come from a family of bankers, of lawyers, and teachers. So that was kind of the three top categories, even from my great grandparents. So I took to banking very naturally, that being a banker and having traveled across India, having lived in multiple states and cities, having learned the language, right? Change was on a multivitamin pill in my life all through. Continues to be because I moved into my 19th house when I moved back from Germany to India a couple of years ago. So I took to banking. I studied banking. I did my master's in bank management. Landed my first role very much in December. As we sit in December 2003 is when I started my career in Mumbai and got into product management from the banking perspective, customer service, customer relationship building, team management, and so on. At a very young age, I had the great opportunity of, literally steering big branches in Mumbai and Bangalore. Moving from banking, teaching came naturally again. So I took to Indian classical dance. The artists in my family, so I started learning at the age of 5 Indian classical dance of Bharatanatyam. So at the age of 11, I could have my first performance, which is an Arangetram in Chennai. And it was very heartwarming to be recognized as a prodigy at the age of 11, doing a solo performance of 2 hours. The journey with dance continued, and that's where I established my own dance institute called Kalabriksha, the Tree of Arts. And I have trained multiple students across the globe, and they continue to carry the flag on. And I'm a big believer again that dance is a medium not just to educate, but also entertain and elevate one to a very highly spiritual level, right? The connection to oneself is what I believe is achieved through arts.
Yep.
The last point was the lawyer, right? I couldn't just get into that field. That is something that I'm feeling bad about. But I use a lot of my legal points or the genetic things that I have with the arguments and negotiations I have with my husband, Raghu. So I've not left any of those coins unturned.
No, it sounds like you're a complete package, and I love the way you said like change is multivitamin for you. And if somebody wants, I know a lot of corporates, and everyone I talk to, change management is one of the area where everybody struggles. And I think you're a classic example of moving 19 houses in a span of 20 years is no easy feat. And to be honest, and I think I would love to pick your brains around that. How did you cope up with that? And what I love about you is the at very such young age, at the age of 5, you got into into this Bharatanatyam, right? And and at the age of 11, you kind of had that phenomenal success,
Yeah.
where even now I get shivers when I'm presenting in as a keynote speaker or wherever, right? But at the age of 11, I could not imagine myself doing that, Divya. And kudos to you. You went about it, and I love about the kind of dynamic experiences that you picked up such a young age, and you all converting that into a meaning as well. And and I just wanted to ask, just as a follow-up, right? How did this your artistic background shape the way you think and lead today?
Absolutely. And I think I will dwell a little deeper into that because what I've been doing is consciously trying to draw these parallels. Until the last few years, I didn't really give it much of a thought until one of my colleagues came up to me in Germany and said, Divya, there's some way you're connecting to your audience and especially the customer conversations. Where is this coming from? And then when we discussed it, went back to my background as an artist and we started creating templates that could be used by everyone. That's when I realized that there's a formal way of also, helping and chasing this value through what we can bring from the art world into the corporate world, right? So I'll give you a couple of examples. From growth cultures to people behaviors to storytelling, there's so many things that we can bring from any art. So I'm talking about art. So if in the listeners you have your own passion coming from, say, sports, chess, right, resilience, you maybe you're a marathon runner, right, try to see these paddles and how you can actually blend it in to make your conversations much more easy to understand and relatable and very human, so to say, right? Because what I speak comes from my stance of experience and expertise, and that brings in that authenticity into it, Kiran. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So in as a classical dancer, when I go on stage, you spoke about jittering and fear, right?
Yeah.
So I have this concept of making friends with the stage. So we go there one day before the rehearsal, when the rehearsals are on, we walk around the stage, look at the length and breadth of it. And when the whole auditorium is empty, there's nobody there, the silence, and you tap a bit to practice your steps, that's kind of a profound moment for an artist. Nobody around you, but you're all by yourself, feeling the energy of that auditorium or the space. It could be a small space, it could be a large space, it could host 5,000 people, regardless of the number of people in the audience. As an artist, you're making friends with that state so that you're going to own it. For me as a dancer, that's my home for the next 2 hours. So I should be comfortable with a nook and corner. And that goes also with you, maybe as a leader or as somebody who wants to be, speaking even in a virtual forum, right? Or a stage, a small space, or a team meeting. Imagine that that is your space to share your thoughts, right? It's not about, whenever I talk to people and I tell them what causes that fear, because they say the voice starts kind of, breaking, the hands and legs starts trembling. So these are all the symbols of when people feel that tension, anxiety. And I always ask them, what is the reason? What is the fear? And when you keep drilling down those fears, you understand that the fear comes from being judged.
Yeah.
That is a very common fear that comes, so that's why I always remember my dance teacher's words. She used to say, Divya, you're there on stage because you are an expert in what you're doing, and you're there to showcase it to your audience and entertain them, educate them, elevate them. So you have a purpose. So you have some expertise, you have a purpose. That's all that matters, right? So that kind of resonates with me even today. And I'll give you an example of one key thing that I use a lot with storytelling, because we're also talking about story feeling, as you put it, Raghu Kiran. That's something that I have been actively engaging, because for me, it's about what's in it for the audience. So let's imagine as a dancer, I'm on stage, I have my audience there. I'm presenting something where I'm showing a lot of facial expressions, movements, and my body language kind of accentuates that feeling, right? Only when I feel it will I be able to translate it to the audience. If I don't feel it, I'm just going to do some mime, it's not going to get through. Only when I feel the statements I'm dancing for or the emotions that's coming through, only when I feel it, I can translate it to you. Fair enough? In the same way, if I'm a leader on stage talking about vision and strategy, until I am, rooted in what it is and understand the why behind it, and I'm passionate about it, I wouldn't be able to translate that energy to my team, right? or our audience. So whatever you're trying to communicate, you could be in sales, you could be in product, you could be talking about the articulating the value of your product, right? Or you could be a startup trying to pitch those 3 minutes of key pitch with your investors, right? So all that matters is what's in it for the audience. It's not about all that you've prepared in your mind, all that I need to say. You don't have to parcel all that. Look at your audience, get the pulse of how they are behaving, their body language, right? And then think through what's in it for them. Why are they here?
Yeah.
Right? And then coin a statement. So that is the concept of rasa in dance. Just to also be specific, rasa is the concept or the red thread between the artist and the audience. So we use this to draw the audience closer to us, get them go far. So it's like a beautiful wave of emotional journey there between the artist and the audience. Now replace that artist and audience with the speaker and the people who are in the audience to listen to you. You're going to draw them close with certain things you say. I'll give you an example. When I talk to customers about digital transformation, right? We are empathizing with them on what's happening in the world. What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? And these are the moments you're drawing them closer to you, where you feel we're all in one circle. It's not you versus me on stage, but we're all in it together. And then we look at what's the value we can drive collectively. So that was one thing. I think we'll get to more as we speak.
No, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of things that you covered here, and I wanted to bit of dissect it, if I may, because there's a lot of beautiful things that you've shared. And I want to start with the beginning, right? And you said you need to feel it, especially you as an artist. When you're in the auditorium, you just wanted to, you mean to say that you, before you present it, you just come early and just feel that? Is that what you used to do when you were performing? Just come early, just see the, um, just get that, that getting that feeling as well. Because I'm trying to be very practical. Like if I had to translate that, how do I make, if I'm a leader talking to my people, right? I wanted to convey my message, but the feeling also, how do a that feeling should be turned into belief that I whatever the belief that I'm holding is, it kind of resonates to the other people. In that connection part, is it something you be able to keep up? Because what I could see that you do, right, as an artists are the great example of connecting with the people. So but how do we kind of translate in a seamlessly way what learnings we as a corporate leaders, or even a corporate, even anyone, right, who wants to connect with the people, what are that those learnings that we can take? Is it something you could emphasize more on that?
Mhm. Sure, Kiran, definitely. One is on the space. This reason I brought up the space is because of the fear, right? Sometimes you need to own that space. When you own that space, you feel very comfortable and you can really bring out the thoughts and mind in a very clear way. Now, imagine a leader who is going to talk about, see, again, we'll get to vision. It's Jan. So I think every company, every leader would be having the mandate of looking at what's the strategy, it remains for 2026, what's our vision, where are we headed, right? So if they were to bring that energy, so again, this is not just information, right? It's not like a PDF document sitting in a folder, but it's like real innate way the company must function, the culture. So this needs much more than just words, right? The words must inspire. Now, imagine this leader stands on the stage. For me, understanding the pulse of your audience and the story feeling part is who are in the audience. So these might be interns who have just joined in, these could be seasoned employees in your company, right? So it depends on who are sitting in the audience and what kind of information are they exposed to on a day to day basis. What kind of challenges do they face on a day to day basis? Because if you don't empathize, you would be talking somewhere around 20,000 foot above the ground and people wouldn't be able to relate to what you're saying. It sounds very fluffy. So somewhere you should find a way to say that, hey, I understand where you are and I understand the challenges that you have or the information you're exposed to, and try to connect it with that. So as a leader, you definitely have to do your homework. Like you go and check the stage and audience, doesn't matter how many are there. What is the blend of it? Maybe it's a mixed crowd, right? Then you should see that your information that you're giving is also something that's meant for everybody, that everybody can take something back from there. So that is one key thing I see when it comes to story feeling, because if you're not, and the most important part is the pre-work, that the leader understands the vision and strategy and stands by it. Only when you know the why behind what you're doing, you will have the confidence to talk about it with emotion. So I think as leaders, we have the purpose of understanding, okay, why are we choosing this path? Why should we be taking our people along here? What are the challenges they are facing or the blocks due to which it's tough for them to move in this direction. How can I support? I think there's a lot of self reflection that we need to do before we step onto the stage and also understand the audience I'm talking to. It could be your leadership team. That means those leaders are exposed to much more information than maybe a group of the entire organization. So that empathy to understand, who am I talking to, what am I talking about, what does it mean to them, and what outcome do I want out of this, kid? And that's supremely important. So, what I have done is I've created a template where any session that I do, I have given a template also to my mentees and also to the participants, where you can go and look at, okay, the first 5 minutes, I'm going to give an introduction. What is the emotion I want my people to feel? And what is the outcome? When I say outcome, I'm going to give possibly a quotation saying, I want to learn more about this. This seems very interesting, right? So, this is a tangible outcome I want in the first 5 minutes, for example. And then when I get to the crux of the conversation, I'm giving them more content and I'm working it backwards from what do I want my audience to feel and take away, and what is the outcome. Maybe the outcome for me would be everybody says, I understand the strategy, I support it, I'm committed to it, and I will trickle it down to the way I work every day. Right? So, this could be a clear outcome I want from my conversation. And as a leader, you build it back into what you're going to say. Because for them to feel that, you have to trigger that. And how do you trigger that is how I suggest the leaders to work backwards. Look at your audience. What emotions do you want to evoke in them with your presentation? What outcomes do you want in their minds? What do you want them to think? And then work backwards to give them that information and inspiration.
Brilliant. Yeah, really already enjoying this lovely conversation, and thanks for sharing a quick glimpse of your template. I could see how this is going to benefit everyone, right? In a way, most of the times it's not about what we are presenting, it's them, what they want to hear and what outcomes you want to get out of it, that having that outcome based, which again it's pretty amazing. And I also like the way of you asking self reflection, right? What emotions you want them to come out of it after whatever you're doing, and what outcomes, and then working backwards and then talking about your content. This kind of a methodology already stuck very high, very strong at me. So based on your experience, Divya, is there any example that you could share where story feeling changed the entire experience of a message? Is there any example where you felt it?
Mhm. There are many. I'm very humbled by that, right? Because every time we speak, not just on the topic, even on any conversations at work or around product or strategy, and I'm a big believer that exchanges are key, right? In a world that we are in, the pace things are moving, you can't get it all, sitting at the desk or, blinking at your screens, but literally talking to people, exchanging, because ideas are springing out of those exchanges. Inspiration is springing out, nudges, right? When I talk to other product leaders and the use of AI, right? We are all in it together and we are progressing together and building and shaping tomorrow. So for me, those exchanges are extremely important. So in one such exchange in one of the product events in India, so I happened to quote a small story at the end of my session where I said, what are your superpowers and are you making use of it? So it's a very little story that I said. And on Diwali Day, I get a ping from one of the participants of that event who said, you lit up the light of inspiration because I was about to join a company as a product manager, and this story made me feel that I could unleash my superpowers even more and go above and beyond. And he became an entrepreneur and started his own company. And that was not the intent when I, said that story, but everybody in the audience are receiving what you're saying in a very different way, right? Depending on their inspiration, their experience, expertise, right? They have their own way of consuming what you're giving them. So you never know that one thing that you say, this again, one great thing that I always love about this is whenever you talk to people, you're not leaving them with one thought to take with them. You're leaving them with one feeling to
Mm.
act upon, right? And that sense of urgency. And one other thing I can never forget is somebody said, hey, I couldn't sleep that night after the session because I was thinking, how else can I, hone my skills here? Because I have tons of, ideas. I want to channelize them. and you have kind of opened this new way of thinking. So these are things which give me an affirmation saying, was this that important? Was it that helpful? And that makes me think in different dimensions, Raghu, where I think, what else can I bring in as parallels? How can I encourage people to be more authentic? Right, that authenticity is so key, because most of them I speak to come from different educational backgrounds. Some people have studied in convents, some people have studied in different parts of the world, and the language proficiency is not the same for everyone. So I say, it's not about the language skills, that shouldn't deter you. If you have to convey a message, you're chasing a value, do it with confidence, right? And language is a secondary part. There's something that you can work upon and hone, but that shouldn't stop you. And do not compare yourself with any other speaker, because every speaker is unique, and that is one thing which you can't find a replacement of. There's no other Raghu Kiran, there's no other Divya, no other you who's watching the audience, because you have your own unique style. You bring the expertise that nobody else does, because you know what blend of things that you have done in your life, and you are the authority to talk about it. Bring those connected examples from your real life, right? Instead of just talking a little fluffy, say, hey, on that day when I went to this place at this time, bring in those moments so that people can start visualizing in their mind. The moment they start visualizing, the story is starting created in their mind. So that authenticity you bring is priceless, and that's the most unique thing you can give. So my suggestion and recommendation is to everybody saying, bring in what you are, your entire personality. Don't shy away from bringing these paddles, right? People are like, can I talk about, me being a sports person? Yes, you can. You're bringing so much of resilience and power from there. Maybe as a leader, you can talk about team efforts, talk about resilience. So that is where I would say that this has really, really helped me a lot to think through and connect those paddles, because I'm getting this regular feedback from the people I'm interacting with saying, hey, this is of value. I could do this. And one startup recently came up to me, a very young startup, and said they had a story because of which they started it. And I said, you should use the story with your investors, because that story has so much power. Rather than saying, this is what we do, this is the value we create, talk about why you started the business in the first go, right? So I think when you have a story, it connects two people. The distance is very short when you're telling somebody a story.
This is very powerful, Divya. And you said the word authenticity, right? I've been in that situation where if you make up your stories, then people will feel it. It's not authentic enough, and it's very important. I think it's very important to come up your own stories, right? And again, going back to, we all have those experiences. Stories are nothing but your experiences, right? What are those experiences that has shaped you, and connect? Is it fair to say those experiences you connect to your emotions that you wanted to evoke from the people, right? Ultimately look back to your experiences, how your current experiences kind of troubled you, and how you as a leader want a better way of doing things. Connect those experiences to those emotions, right? Where you change these beliefs, hey, things can be done here. And I really love the way about your story about how you went about making the gentleman, right? Where he was thinking small. If you really connect to the people, if you really connect, it can unlock your something big, right? And that is what happened to that product management. I would not do that maybe 5 years ago, but good to him. And I think I could see the value that story feeling. But again, Divya, how I still see there's a lot of what do you think, if you had to give 2 or 3 best practices, which we already covered, but again, if you have to make it concrete, what's the best way uh, to evoke those emotions, right? Because the emotions could be mixed, right? Some people emotion, I wanted to, I want this to be, and I have come here, I want this to be wrapped up in 10 minutes. Some people are emotional enough where I wanted to feel it. Because when we are presenting to audience are kind of on a ground level, right? Most of them, they wanted to finish off. But how do you, as an leader, or perhaps you as a person, right, when you're doing How do you kind of balance that, and yet you convey your message and evoke those emotions?
Agree. And I think I'll start with your first question, right? It was on the reflections. So I'm looking at the background I'm using today. So this was a picture from a morning, Kiran. This was about 5:30, 5:45 a.m. in Mexico City. I had the opportunity of doing a social sabbatical this year. For 1 month, I could go there, sit with a fintech startup and look at their AI strategy. And we also built like an AI bot for their customers. So this experience to me, the reflections I saw there, the calm feeling that morning, and we were kind of going through the foggy lakes there and the reflections. I also believe that we are like water, like Bruce Lee also says, be like water, my friend. For me, it's been like,
Be water, my friend.
how can you just find your path and keep flowing, right? Of course you will have rocks. So the experiences you spoke about, Raghu, I have had wonderful successful failures
Yes.
that confuses you. I use the term successful failures for a reason, because I had a career which was booming. It was like riding on a autobahn, driving on an autobahn, right? Like extremely fast. Very quickly, I reached good levels with the banking world. I was in sales, so the numbers spoke for themselves. Relationship management, with a career peaking with the banking industry. I had my son in 2009, and as a young mom, I decided I can't really put in so many hours. Let me take a break and get back to my career. So when I took a break, it so happened that we also moved to Germany as my husband took a new role on, in a company in Germany. And when we went there, that's when the whole thing began, right? Because for somebody who's just seen success in a very different capacity in life, I'm there in a new country, minus 13 degrees, do not know the language yet, with a small little kid with me. And that's when I slowly start finding my ground in a new place. It's like completely jumping into cold water. Be like water, went in there, absorbed the beautiful culture there, made such beautiful contacts, friends and family back in Germany today, 13 years there. But when I had to come back to my career, right, because I had taken a break, I went in there. I had 70 plus rejections because I did count them, built in a little more resilience. Before I landed my active role in Germany, I did travel 300 kilometers a day up and down to get to my biking job in Germany. Having said that, this has built in a lot of resilience and empathy again for the people who apply. So many people who say, I didn't get through, I say, it's nothing about you. If you didn't get through something or in an application where you thought you were an able candidate, it's nothing about you. There could be maybe more eligible candidates, or maybe your qualifications didn't meet in there, or generally it didn't work out. It is nothing to reflect about who you are, right? That shouldn't impact you. You should, each one of us should have that firewall, because there are tons of elements to make you feel low, right? And you should be your own inner mentor who keeps saying, just get up and walk. That's fine. That's fine. If not this, you will find, because you're chasing value. You're not chasing anything else. I had a lot of energy, the lot of intent and passion to give back something, because there's so many ideas that keep springing. And I said, how can I find my way? Like I used to tell the universe, show me a way so that I can unleash this and reach the right people and do the right things, right? And you need a lot of patience there. So for me, the experience that I've had of extreme success, extreme recognition, extreme low points where, I was like, I felt I was not even worth a simple job, to finding my way back, continuously reinventing myself, Raghu. So I learned the language. So did my C1 language course in Goethe. And I'm a big believer that you need to adapt, because if I'm there talking to people, I need to blend in, right? So it was very important for me to see what next instead of brooding and staying there. I'm a big believer that you should be very quickly moving on to, okay, fair enough, I understand what next. So these experiences have brought in a lot of empathy in me. And you spoke about the concept that I have been coining, emopathy, where I bring in emotions and empathy. The reason I say is, emotions are of different flavors. That's come from my dancing world, right? What we do is from a very young age, when you look at anger, anger has 50, 60 variants underneath, right? An anger of a goddess on a demon is different. An anger of Radha and Krishna in a playful way is different. An anger of a mom on the child is different. They're all of different grades. And as an artist, you can't depict everything with the same expression. You'll have very different degree of body language, right? You can't treat the kid as a demon, so to say. So there's very different way and subtle differences in every layer of one single emotion. So for me, emotions, you need to, there's nothing like just frustration or anger or happiness or sadness. There are multiple layers. And for me as a person, And also in my leadership path, I've seen that can I get to that? Can I understand what they're going through? Right? Because in the banking world, I've had many people come and tell me, oh, that's a problematic person or a customer or a problematic kid when it comes to teaching. I say, don't put those two things together. Problematic people or problematic person, split them. There is a problem, there is a person going through something. Can we please address the problem and understand this person? So that is where I'm talking about emopathy, Kiran,
Yeah.
because emotion is one. Empathy is basically putting yourself in their shoes. When I say their shoes, I saw this beautiful line in the Bangalore metro. It says, if you have to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, you have to remove yours first.
Yes.
And that is something we don't do, right? Because we try to put ourselves in other shoes with our own preconceived notions and perceptions. So that is supremely important, that if you have to empathize, you should also see how can you let go of your preconceived notions and inhibitions and completely be there for that person absorbing it. I would love to just bring one example from the dance world year ago. So when I was very young and my teacher said, go look at a lotus flower or go look at a deer in a zoo, because we had to depict that in dance, right? So when I went there, it's not just about looking at the deer, it's about looking at its body language. Keep staring at it where it's like very scared all the time, it's very timid, it has beautiful eyes, it has very sharp movements. So when you observe something, it's about moving from being the observer to the observed. So I become the deer on stage, right?
Mhm.
So I'm observing now. I'm trying to understand what it is, what it does, how does it feel. And when I come on stage, I'm not Divya becoming the deer, I am the deer.
Mm.
So this is the utmost level of empathy I can think of, where I connect it from my art world into the corporate world. Because when I'm listening to people, I'm listening just neutrally like a sponge, trying to understand what you're going through, not with an argument in my mind saying, no, 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 the survey result said this, or this is what it is, right? So just keep a blank slate, understand what this person is trying to say, and then see where you can get to adding value to both.
Brilliant, brilliant. I really love the concept of that splitting. I we do often say that. In fact, I was also culprit of it in saying, "Hey, is this person's problematic?" But the way you've kind of splitted it in a way, hey, there is a problem, but there is a person. There is a person, and there are certain emotions associated for that person. So when we start splitting it up and look at from a different lens, then possibly you might find a better way of handling that situation. And I wanted to understand, Divya, is this this emopathy that you talk about, right? Is it a skill that one can develop?
To each their own. See, just again to address the last question that you asked about how do you evoke emotions, because everybody has a different way of experiencing emotions or showing it in a capacity or driving it in a capacity. Again, we should understand that each one of us are very unique and you can't please everybody, right? Not everybody in the audience will feel that inspiration. What you can also do is go there and do the job you're there for, right? You're there, give all your passion and intent, and beyond the point, you cannot influence how people receive it, right? So you should also you can't condition everybody to receive it. So for me, even as a speaker, right, many people come and say, I started off well, Divya, but in the middle I realized people were checking their phones, people were just walking off, I felt the conversation was boring. And again, these are things that can affect you when you are speaking on stage. Or maybe I'm not delivering it well. You start creating your own story in your mind, right? So what I tell people is, sometimes some people have supportive gaze. So sometimes there could be one or two people in the audience who are responding to you well, nodding, smiling. You're able to get cues. Try to take supportive engagement from the audience. If you're a new speaker or if you're a speaker who feels that nudge, try to have some spots in your audience where you're kind of regularly getting that affirmation that, hey, look, there are people interested, right? Because until you reach a point saying they are here, even if there is one person in the audience, I'll deliver this, because that one person could be a multiplier of value by 100 times, right? So you can never underestimate the power of just the number of people, but you should make the number count in terms of what do they do after they listen to what you're saying, right? And that would be a way you can actually think of how do you bring that emotion part to your audience, but you cannot navigate it saying that every single person should feel it. Yeah.
Yeah. And was there any time, Divya, where you felt that uh, you literally wanted to evoke those emotions to the audience? I've seen you presenting, by the way, in NASCOM, brilliant, and I literally got I know you kind of kept that 1 hour of um, what do you say? I literally glued to your presentation for 1 hour, you know, and definitely that's an area where if you ask 9 out of 10 people would love to improve those communication skills or influencing those your messaging in a way that people are come out of certain emotions and feel that, right? So was there any particular time where you felt things were not going as per your plan, and you're not able to connect your audience, right? um, and in those situations, how did you overcome that? Because you literally went with an intention of making audience feel the problem, and but you were not able to generate that. During those situations, how did vulnerability situations, how did you go about handling that situation?
Correct. Again, I would connect this back to my dancing world, right? Even in a dance performance, sometimes you have an audience who are quiet and who are listening to you. Sometimes it's like maybe like a wedding where people are busy doing their own stuff. It's noisy, and that's a moment when you, as an artist, you feel like I mean, who is actually looking at what I'm doing? So somewhere you need to have this adaptability. That's why I would love to give this tip for everybody, saying, be prepared, but don't be too prepared. The reason I'm saying that is, sometimes we have our talk tracks, we have everything. Fair enough, good to be prepared because you know what the intent is, what you want to communicate, and depending on your comfort level, right? Some people are comfortable with the talk track, some people cannot ever have a talk track or a teleprompter. So when you go to the audience, it is important to be prepared about the topic. Of course, you're a subject matter expert, so you bring it, a very authentic take to it, and you understand everything around it. That's the expectation. But when you're too prepared, what happens is you're missing the cues from your audience. You're just going on doing your, I brought 10 slides, Kiran, today I'll show you 10 slides, come what may. Right? Even if everybody drops off, I'll show it. That is not the intent. So when you see that somebody is showing interest on a particular topic you're talking about from the audience, in dance, we start getting applause suddenly in the middle of a performance. That's when you know that something is interesting for them, right? And as an artist, we impromptu improvise on stage if it's a solo performance, right? So even as a person speaking on stage, though it's not, maybe if it's a coordinated one, you should talk to your partner before you change the talk track completely. But if you are authentically presenting, it's in your hands as an expert. I would say, be prepared, but have the wiggle room to bring in extempo conversations. Because if your audience is interested in something, give them what they want, rather than harping the whole things that you thought would be important to them, because they are there in front of you live and kicking and responding to you. So start observing them more. In that way, you will not feel that whatever you came to do has gotten kind of withered away or not been purposeful. So in that regards, I think building that connection and building that clarity, saying, I'm here for you, if this interests you, let's talk more about it, would be a great way to connect. I'll give you one incident that happened, Kiran. This was in Germany, in a beautiful castle. We had a dance performance, and least did I expect this outcome out of the performance. It was a kautam, a performance in Tamil, a language which maybe the audience there wouldn't know, but we explain things, then we talk about what is the intent behind it, and we start performing. After the performance, there's a lady who came and she was crying and she started hugging me, which was very unusual, and she said, I don't know what you did or what was the language or what was the movement, but something hit me, something triggered me, and I feel so happy and I wanted to come and hug you. And that was like I kept thinking about it. Then it happened twice within a span of 2 years. And that got me thinking that this rasa or the red thread I'm talking about hits different people in different intensity.
Mm.
Maybe a few do not feel anything, but they carry something which could slowly influence them. Or for few people, it doesn't have any influence, but they've just heard it, which they can make use of. But for some people, it literally shakes them up to say, do something about it or go talk about it. So, in that way, you can't influence what the others feel, but you can definitely influence how you feel about it and how you're translating it to them. That's only the one thing we have in our hands.
And I think that's one powerful takeaway I'm going to take, Divya, is it's very important we should feel it, right? It's and we should have that belief that whatever we're trying to communicate is you mean it, you feel it, and your feeling is what attracting the audience's attention as well. And and going back, and this is where I see when I'm like you, like when I'm talking to a lot of startups and founders, even the leaders, right? Um, there needs to be a fine balance between your brain and heart in terms of thinking logically versus thinking, right, bigger picture. And where you see a lot of your products, your it's all about your product, your features, your capabilities, and your but it's very less on outcomes, which means if you're not touching the outcomes, that means you're not evoking emotions. So what tips do you would love to give to product leaders, or the one who really great at building products but they are failing to communicate in a way that they are able to connect with the people, not just a platform or a product? I would love to get your inputs around that, Divya.
Brilliant question, Raghu, you touch upon, right? It's so key. But sometimes these are subtle things which are usually ignored, or, people like, this is a given, or this is soft skill. But I think the biggest thing is about, even I come from the technology space, right? So I always say it's not about the technology,
Yeah.
it's about what the technology can do for a business. So, as a product strategist, when I lead, I say it's not about feature functionality in a product, but what is the outcome it gives a business. So, you nailed it right when you said it has to be. When you talk about brain and heart, there's one thing in common. Why are we doing it, and what's the outcome out of this? And are we deriving that value? It's as simple as that, right? And you do not need very intellectual terminologies and very complex structures to explain that at a level of value where you say, hey, by doing this, if you look at digital transformation, right? Everybody we speak to, they're chasing two key values. They could be looking at AI, they could be looking at agentic scenarios, but what do they want to do? They want two things. They want efficiency for the business. But the revenue cost and risk is the same for every company. They're looking at how can I make my customer journey, my employee journey any better. That's the efficiency they're looking at. The other thing they're looking at is experiences. How do I give this aligned and interconnected experiences for my customers and employees? So these two things are top of mind when it comes to any business. And how can you make that happen? To make that happen, you need to have your people, your processes, and your technology moving in the same rhythm, right? So if people are not equipped to handle the technology that's advanced, or the technology is not matching the pace at which the people are imagining, thinking, and having a vision, or if the processes are not being reinvented, they're still the dated processes which are stopping both the people and technology from deriving that value, I think, sorry for that. So maybe you could start that thing again. Give me a moment, I'll just grab a glass of water.
Let's take it. I'll pause it. Yeah.
That's such a beautiful question, Raghu, you ask, right? Because product companies, technology companies, or any field that you're in, I always say in my role, I always say it's not about the technology, right?
Yeah.
It's about what technology can do for a business. What is that outcome it is delivering to a business? Right? When you look at any technology, now we are talking about AI and agentic scenarios. It's not about AI as such. It's about what is AI feeding into your business? Is it adding efficiency? Is it making your customer and employee journey any better? Then the answer is yes to it. Where do you invest? How do you derive that value? And how do you talk more about the value you have derived? And where would you accentuate that further? Right? So I think it's supremely important for anybody, be it the startup conversations I'm having or the product conversations, and being a strategist. I have created a framework out of this where I give leading questions to people to ask, saying, why are we building this product? And who are we building this for? And what should we build and what should we not build? Because that not is also a very important part, because we have a lot of to-do list. We need to have a not to-do list, because otherwise everything becomes a priority and you're shooting in the dark, right? So it's supremely important to understand and ask these questions, these value statements, because only when you understand this and your team is on the same page, maybe you could go back to your team and say, why are we doing this? Check whether you get the same answer.
Yeah.
Where are we, playing, or what is the market? Where are we not doing things? The question would be, is everybody aligned with that thought process? That means that's where more communication is required, more engagement is required, right? Because communication is one where you send in a lot of content material saying everything is available here. That could be something for a pre-read or reading later. or have those go gembas and conversations, sit with your teams, those water cooler or coffee corner conversations, because that's where the real questions pop up, real intent comes in. And I always say there is this power of pause and question mark, Kiran. So even in storytelling or even for any leader, the power of pause is very profound. And most of the times, everybody uses filler words, right? That's a big concern, right? You know, I know. Yeah. Each one of us, right? Regardless of how many years you speak, there would be some filler words. When you record yourself and listen to a recording of the meeting, I'm like, why am I keep saying that? Right? So these filler words come in because as human beings, we fear pause. If you think if there is a pause, something is not worked out, it's like it's not acceptable. So we tried instead of a pause or a full stop, you have a or a or a filler word coming in because you want something to fill that pause. But the power of pause is profound because as an artist, imagine there is a lot of musical instruments, a mridangam playing, a veena playing, the nattavangam, which is basically the bells, and your anklets are clinging. There's so much of action. And amidst that entire jati, as we call it, a performance, where you have more of movements, there's a sudden pause. That pause accentuates and lifts up the audience because they find that flavor. Most of the applause comes in there because you start and catch up from there, right? So we also try to bring in these flavors to the audience when we have the sudden pause, sudden change in rhythm, unexpected, pauses where, the emotions are going deep. We pause for a moment so that the emotion sinks in the audience. So as an artist, you look at varied ways to kind of elevate the experience of your audience. In the same way, when you're a speaker, you can look at if you have delivered a very, very important value. You say something and you want that to settle into people, give a pause there, just a few seconds, so that they can soak it in, let that sink in. And the power of pause cannot be underestimated. And I would love for everybody to think through, instead of having 100 statements after something that you made powerful, where can you stop? Because I think the perfection comes when you don't have anything more to add, but anything more to remove. As they say, even in design, the minimalism that you can have, saying, be clear, be structured, stop where you think that emotion is on a high, rather than, continuing it further. So that would be a suggestion I would have, that use pause, use question marks. Question marks are self reflection. Sometimes in your audience, people don't want to answer things. They feel a little, I've come here to listen, don't ask me things. Sometimes some people would love to engage. So you need to gauge that. But the question mark can also be as reflections. You can give some reflections to them. Why do you think we are doing this? Or why do you think our customers should buy this particular product? And what do you think is going to be the life of your customer 3 years from now? That's a very, visionary statement. Have you thought about it? Right? You're just asking one question, but you're nudging them to think, have you thought about how their industry is evolving, how their lives are evolving, how the personas are changing? Is your product meeting that, right? So it has so many threads underneath, but as a leader, you can bring up the right questions so that you're making people think in the right direction and also retrieve the right questions. And Raghu, when I say leader every time, for me, everybody's a leader in their own capacity.
Yeah.
Even anybody who comes in right out of college or school, or even one of my youngest dance students has been a great teacher for me because she always comes up with phenomenal ways of doing things in a simple way. So I think we need to look at leadership in every capacity and acknowledge it. And even these reflections and questions coming in will add a lot of weightage and value to how we are progressing as a collective organization. So that would be one thing, use pause and question mark.
That, in fact, that is brilliant. That was, in fact, that was one of my other key takeaway as well, where I've taken many takeaways, but that's pause and question mark. Absolutely right. In fact, I was reflecting myself where I often use those filler words, but it's important you stop there where you felt, where you have taken your audience to the peak of their emotions, right? And put that question mark and let them. It's also sink. Let them also. It's also opportunity for them to sink in. I remember most recently where I was presenting, and uh, and I was just saying that, hey, one of the leader was often talking about my revenue was going high, my revenue was going high, but ultimately, hey, your sales is vanity, right? Your profit is sanity, and your cash flow is a reality, right? How much of your revenues is really putting into your cash flow? I mean, how much money you have in the bank account? And I could see that it was literally that person took some time to reflect on it, because and and of course, I've learned from there. I've carried on, but for that person, the key takeaway was that he was only focusing on chasing revenue, but he was not focusing on the cash flows, on the profit margins, and 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 it's important to pause and reflect. And when you were saying that, I was reflecting to myself. And look, Divya, I can go on and on and on with you, because you really bring that concepts which are really, really touching, especially in this generative AI era where everybody is earlier the information was knowledge was is a game changer, but knowledge has become commodity, right? It's the same like the content in the generative AI era. So we humans have got more opportunity to connect and feel. And your storytelling about don't tell things but make customers feel, or make your clients feel, make your audience feel, that transition in their mindset itself will change a lot of things. And I love that concept of storytelling to story feeling, and also that combination of emotion and empathy, right? When you combine that, you will see transformational results. So, Divya, I just wanted to ask, right, if you had to give one piece of advice finally before we wrap up, what advice you would love to give to our listeners, around especially the storytelling to story feeling, and I know from Emopathy point of view, what is that? What are those three key takeaways they want our listeners to take away and act upon it?
Absolutely. That puts in a lot of responsibility now to filter it down to three. But as I always say, right, even the filler words, Kiran, you were speaking about, maybe when we listen back to our recording, we might find that, oh, there is some new filler word that I've been using, right? So that's what I want to say, that it is a journey. There is nothing like the perfect version of anything. You can only be the best version of yourself. So for me, the first advice or recommendation or very heartfelt request to you is, please be your own cheerleader, right? Because sometimes we get too critical of ourselves, saying, hey, why am I speaking like this? Or why did I do this? Oh my God, we beat ourselves too much. So my request would be, please be your first cheerleader, your inner mentor, because you're also on a journey and you're honing it every step. So when it comes to storytelling or story feeling, regardless of which capacity you're starting or how big your audience is, how big the important matter is, there's only one thing that matters. You know your subject, you're confident about what you're going to say, and there are people who value what you're saying. That's all that matters. You don't have to think about any other things, about the judgments or whatsoever. Let that away. Be your cheerleader, go and do your best, and you're going to just get better and better by every passing day. So my request would be your own cheerleader. The second thing, as I said, is understand your audience, right? Be it in your professional life and you're going to talk to a one on one with a customer, go understand their industry, go to their websites, understand what's their purpose, what's their vision, what is their industry going through, what are the challenges. Because if you're not connected to where they are or what they are feeling, you will be talking something in a very different tangent, which makes no sense to them, right? So somebody says, I have a particular problem, and you're giving a very different solution to it, right? You don't understand it. So it's very important to do your homework of understanding them. It's not just a homework for the sake of doing it, but just go see it. Oh, their vision really matches with our company's vision. This is the shared value we bring in, right? And believe me, most of those conversations are not based on how brilliant the product is, but they are very invested whether you care about them, you know them, and that's where they trust you that you can give them the best advice. So my second request will be, know your audience, right? It could be a one-on-one, to a one-on-one with your team member, to a big customer event, or a big arena where you're doing thought leadership. Know your audience. So that'll be my second request. Third request would be, I will leave it empty, Raku. I'll tell you why. Because with whatever people have heard today, I want them to take it back and say, okay, this is what I infer out of it, and this is what I would fill the third suggestion to be. Because whenever I talk of frameworks, whenever I create a framework, I don't make a box. I make a box, but I leave the corners kind of open, because I'm a big believer that you can't put things always in a framework and kind of drill it down and use it. You can take good things from there, but apply your unique touch to it and layer to it.
Yeah.
So just to breed in that curiosity and thinking as though there is no box, I will say I don't have a third suggestion. And if the listeners can populate it based on what they think could be the third suggestion, I would love to hear that in the comments, Raghu. That will be very interesting.
Wow, this is quite unique, a way of doing things. And I really, honestly, I love that uniqueness. And I think we just have to feel the story. And I often see that you could listen, but if you don't act upon it, you're never going to get, you're never going to get results. And it's great that we touched upon this topic. This topic which you're very passionate about is, we often tell stories. We often want either our customers or audience to um, uh, uh, to do the things that we wanted, but we never think, because I always say true communication is the response that you get. If you're not getting the response, then that means your communication is failing somewhere. And that, always go and benchmark yourself. Have you made your customers feel the problem? Because whilst you can change the processes, you can change the products, you can change the platforms, but few things will never change. Those are principles of people buy from people, and people buy through emotions and justify with logic. And it's up to us, how do we work on those principles by making your customers or making your audience feel the problem, take those, evoke those emotions. And I really love about your, be your own cheerleader, right? Become better you. And preparation is the key to any, is the first step in planning for any success. And know your audience, know your customers, what pain points they're troubling with. And you've connected all the dots for me, Divya. And I think it's been really an such an enriching conversation. And thank you for sharing your wisdom, your artistic spirit, your and the philosophy of emopathy. Your perspective reminds all of us that leadership is not about just strategy. It's all about that connections, that resonance, and that creating those feelings. And and I have to say, it was one of those profound conversations that I've had recently.
Lovely, Raghu. And you nailed it. When you said feelings are all that matter. Maybe I'll try to end with a story. This was way back in July 2005, if I'm not wrong. These were the times when Mumbai had the heavy rains. There were flooding, and we were all young people in our careers. We didn't even realize that the rain was pouring and the streets were getting clogged until the phone started, jamming. We realized something was wrong. We should head back home. And I was this young, 22-year-old, with a very happening career, very excited about all that I was doing. I'm walking back to my home from Andheri in Mumbai to Santa Cruz. Not very far though, but of course, a few kilometers away. We realize that as we go, the level starts going higher. And I luckily had one of my biggest heels that I worn that day, which saved my life. So I'm here today because of the heels, 3-inch heels I wore on that day. So when we went into one of the roads, which was slightly down under a bridge, Raghu, the water started, like literally the level started rising. And I couldn't swim. And I was holding everything that I owned very tight, my bag, my phone, my papers. And that was the moment when I started bubbling and I thought, okay, this is the end of it all. It was coming close. I let go of all that I owned. There was a sense of peace. And suddenly I saw like a movie, screen, a vista of 5 to 6 key scenes from my life, from my childhood, from my school age to the recent ones with my grandparents, with my mom. And suddenly a sense of peace. And I'm just seeing like a movie in front of my eyes. And that's when I remember somebody pulled me out and helped me out. People were always there. And I'm here today. So I always remember, when you talk about human life, it's also a string of stories. At the end, maybe all that we remember were those intense moments that they stay with us. And we're all chasing that. We're not chasing titles, we're not chasing money, but we're chasing the value we can offer and what stays with us, right? What are those intense moments that we are creating for ourselves and the others? So I would love to leave with that because those feelings are for real. And for me, I've experienced it. And after that experience, I always go back to that saying, it's all about this. It's all about connecting with people, talking about value, and looking at how do we chase and ride this value together. As simple as that.
Profound, very profound. Thank you, Diva. With such beautiful thought, I would welcome our audience to please drop in your message. And Divya has closed it amazingly well by leaving the third uh, takeaway to fill up yourself. And I would love to hear your thoughts. And thank you, Divya. Once again, as I said, it's one of those profound conversations. You feel that literally, hey, there's so many things that I got away today. and most importantly, what are those things which I can be a better person, where I can be not a teller, I want to be a feeler, or to make people feel. And I think that transition thinking in your mindset itself will yield the benefits of it. Once again, thank you, and we'll stay in touch.
Thanks, Raghuvan. Love the energy in your conversations too. I've seen a lot of your conversations earlier too, and the wonderful audience you've had, and to the people watching again, right? So it's a bi-directional conversation here. So we're all learning together. So I would love for these conversations to continue, Raghu, and also these connections. So very happy that you had me here, and I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation with you, authentic as it can get.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you, Divya.